Hello and welcome to another episode in our series of online events for 2020. My name is Grant Mudge. I'm the Ryan Producing Artistic Director for the Notre Dame Shakespeare Festival, and I'm really delighted tonight to bring you Stanton Davis. Stanton has taught and worked with us both as an actor and as a voice coach over the years. He's currently the head of the BFA program at the Northern Illinois University in DeKalb, Illinois. And tonight he'll lead a voice and text workshop. You'll see members of the apprentice program in the class, and they have a quick Q&A with Stanton at the end of the show. I hope you'll stay tuned for that as well. Thanks again for joining us online for the Notre Dame Shakespeare Festival 2020. Take care.
Hi, guys. So I have served several times as a vocal coach for the Notre Dame Shakespeare Festival, and also acted in the festival about 5 years ago. And I wanted to do a quick workshop to give you a sense of what it is that I do when I work as the vocal coach at the festival, because I work very much hand in hand with the young company, and many of you are going to be in the young company, and just wanted to give you a sense of where we are going to go, what journey or odyssey that we would go on, and also for other people to get a sense of just what the heck is it that a vocal coach does. I remember when I was a young actor, first couple of shows that I did, I sort of showed up at the space at beginning rehearsals, and there were all these people that were doing all this like really strange stuff. You know, it's like they were talking like they were children, or they were, you know, making sounds like police sirens, or dropping over and flopping back up, or saying ridiculous children's rhymes or things like that. And I was like, what the hell are those people doing? And I think it's actually sort of almost become a meme that before actors start acting, they do all these sort of bizarre rituals. And of course, now I've figured out that all those rituals have a purpose. Although I do feel that sometimes people do them in a kind of mindless way where they're not actually doing them to a point. So one of the things that I thought that I would do is sort of with you guys go through, at least for me, what the point of some of those exercises are, and then hopefully take those exercises and apply them into some things that you can do with them that are specific to the work that you'd be doing as an actor with the Notre Dame Shakespeare Festival. So anyway, in a way, sort of demystifying the secret handshake that is the sort of actor's warm-up. So the idea behind all this is just taking a look at some of those rituals and looking at making them a little bit more at purpose. So anyway, in order to do that, if you guys wouldn't mind, so that I can see you, can you turn your cameras on so that as we're working on some of these things that I can actually see what you're doing with your faces? We're gonna start by just doing some physical articulation exercises. What my mentor, I'm a certified Fitzmaurice voice teacher, and studied with the great voice and speech teacher Dudley Knight. He used to call this mouth yoga. And so we're just going to do a few little exercises that come from the Knight Thompson voice work, mouth yoga, and of course with a nod towards me sort of making some of the stuff my own. So let's just start by warming up by just chewing as if you just have a big ball of leather in your mouth, and chew as if you're just trying to, and add some sound to it, like the sound helps you chew. Which your tongue is involved, your eyebrows, your nostrils. Really working to try to feel and sense all the muscles of the face, and adding into it the voice so that you can kind of both have a vocal component going at the same time as a physical component. Because so much of what we do is the marrying of the two. Good. And let's do a little stretch to just stretch out the corners of the mouth, the radius muscle, and we're going to stretch it back roughly. And then they're going to add into it some muscles right above that are used in smiling. And then also these ones down here, they're the pressors, and then one up, one down, and they're right. And that's the same. Let it snap and blow. Maybe off to the side so you don't cover your screen. Good. And tuck your tongue under your lower front teeth and roll it out of your mouth. Ah. Ah. Chew. And then out again. Ah. And chew. And then in and out, almost like your Ethel Merman. And it's only fun if you let it be fun. It's either Axl Rose or Ethel Merman. Good. And I see people taking drinks of water. That's always good. And just one more time, let it out as far and see if you can get that stretch going all the way from the larynx forward. Feel the whole inside of your mouth opening as you do that. And notice that you can actually kind of add a little bit of a lift in the back of the mouth, and it might even trigger a yawn while you're doing it. Good. And we're going to do a little exercise, actually, that's going to really help open the inside of your mouth. In the Arthur Lesak voice work, he talks about an inverted megaphone in the back of the mouth, trying to find that space inside the mouth. I use the image of like a cathedral. If you can imagine that the soft palate lifts up and opens out wide like the flying buttresses of a cathedral, that we're going to try to find as much space in the back of the mouth as possible. When you're working outdoors, you actually need to have the mouth more open. And obviously with the Young Company, you're going to be working outdoors quite a bit. Those of you that have worked outdoors before know that you really do have to make a big shift here. So or a giant cathedral, lifting the soft palate in the back of the mouth, the walls, the throat open to the back, and the tongue pulls forward slightly. And just breathe through that and some sound. And now, hopefully, as you're doing that, you started to feel the beginnings of a yawn. So an amateur yawn, you know, most people in the amateur yawn, they cover their mouth like that and stuff like that, right? We're going to do what Dudley Knight used to like to call the professional yawn. Okay, this is a yawn only for professionals. The idea being that that a yawn can be really useful way of not just oxygenating your blood, but also giving a real instant stretch or warm up to the entire face. So the idea here is to let this yawn include the cathedral that's in the back of your mouth, that megaphone, and just keep the tongue on the wet part of the lower lip in the front so that the tongue is forward, and you get the sense, that'll keep the root of the tongue down a bit, how much space you can have in your mouth, but at the same time, give yourself a big stretch with that into the yawn. Open your mouth even more, as far open as you can get them. And then at the same time, try to feel that space in the back of the mouth. Make some sound with it. Start with a little bit of an H. That'll keep you from glottalizing. Good. And again, what that does is it just gives a nice stretch to that whole area in the mouth, and also kind of wakes you up a little bit too. I don't know if you ever noticed you're feeling a little tired, how great it is to yawn a little. It does, because it does sort of hyperoxygenate your blood. So anyway, a little bit of a professional yawn. Let's do another little activity that is just to wake up the muscles of the face, because the muscles of the face have both to do with articulation and with resonance. The muscles are too tense, you don't get the resonance of the sinuses underneath them. And if the muscles aren't strong and flexible, you get unclear or unmuscular articulation. So let's just play a little bit with, imagine that you have a little tense place by your right ear, and you're slowly going to pass that tension across the front of your mouth and over to your left ear. So you're going to start over here, tensing everything, slowly move that tension to the left ear. And see if you can then pass it back and forth a few times, like you've got a wave of tension going through from one side to the other. And really, when you're working for that tension, work really, really hard to actually feel the tension in that moment as you go through. Be as specific as possible with passing that tension, because with the tension, then let it go. Now we'll start with the chin and move up. And you can pass the tension up and down. You can see why to a young actor this would be terrifying to see for the first time when you walk into a rehearsal, right? So then we want to find two different points of tension. This is a fun little activity. Find one point of tension here and have everything in your head point. You can choose a different, somewhere asymmetrical on your face, and pull all of the tension in your face towards that spot, right? And then pick another spot somewhere else asymmetrically and have half the tension go to that spot. And then if you want to take a look at what those are some pretty horrific faces, and let it go and blow it up. Pat your face a little bit. This is a way into something that they do in England called Gurning, and a thing that Dudley Knight covers in his book. That is an activity that he actually has competitions with his students, or he used to when he taught at UC Irvine. Let's start over a different point of tension, and another point of tension somewhere else, and split the difference. Half the face pulls there, half the face pulls the other one. And then make some sound from that place. Maybe even take a line of text from that place. To be lost is nothing but to be safely dust. And two different places. I first the night claws stick deep, but in his frailty of nature reigns that which would be feared. Yeah. So you have several different points where you're moving that back and forth. And don't be afraid to let the structure of the face dictate the sound that comes out. And if you want to, you can, let's see, maybe turn on your microphone so I can hear some of these. Just flip your microphones on for a minute so I can hear the sound coming out of your face as you go through. And go ahead and choose another spot, and an asymmetrical spot, and then speak through the...
Excuse me, ma'am. If I may, I will like other time.
Excellent. So let me just hear a couple individually. Avi, can I hear yours?
Sorry, is it words or just sounds?
Words, if you could. See if you can just put a little bit of text of some kind. It could just be a nursery rhyme or the Declaration of Independence. Or
Once upon a time, there was a little girl who lived far, far away.
Excellent, excellent. So you can hear that there's an actual a vocal characteristic or resonance that comes from how you tense the face. Let's just try another one. Somebody else who I don't know. Patrick.
Dost thou not suspect my place?
That's awesome. And how about Jessica? Make sure you find both your points and then make a little bit of the sound and then add the voice, add the text to it, Jessica.
To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether it's more noble than mine to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune and by opposing end them.
That's awesome. Thank you. Does anybody else have one that's awesome that I can hear? Volunteers? All right, well, that's fine. So, I mean, part of this, the idea of this is that when you're doing this, also the thing about gurning and doing the gurns is that it actually really does wake up the face and get you aware of all the musculature of your face. You know, in voice class, I have students learn the names of all these muscles and things like that. But more importantly than knowing all the names of all these muscles is knowing when they're tense, what happens when you release them, how tensing something affects the tonal quality and sound, and that when you do that, you can also make certain that you let go of it afterward. You get it released. And hopefully, as you're doing these, it won't just be to create a grotesque, but that it also frees your face up for better resonance and also just allows you to be more facially expressive as you work, if that makes sense. Let's just move on a little bit to another area that I always kind of thought was strange when I watched actors warm up first. I'm going back to when I first started taking acting classes, seeing people do these tongue twisters, nursery rhyme kind of things. And, you know, a lot of people would do them so quick that I couldn't even understand the words they were saying, right? And so I want to introduce a notion of nursery rhymes as a way of doing several different things. Tongue twisters, nursery rhymes, right? And the different purposes for doing them, and you should know which of those purposes you're doing when you're doing them, because they are actually for very different things. So let's just start with, you guys probably know Peter Piper picked a pack of pickled peppers, right? Classic. It's a classic. It's Turner classic movie sort of thing. Yeah. Everybody knows that, right? And if you don't, that's fine, because I'll lead into it. But here's what I want you to do. I want you to start just with the very first consonant sound in the very first word, which is p, all right? And I want you to build up the pressure behind the consonant for a while before you release it. So it's going to be a little bit like this, all right? And really what I'm doing is I'm pushing the lips together. This is what's called a bilabial plosive. Pushing my lips together, really making them work. I'm actually giving my lips a workout, like if you went to the gym and did a bench press, except you're doing it with your lips. So the first time through, we're working for muscularity of the articulators. So just try Peter, right? So we have two vowels and two consonants, E and vowels, P and K consonants. And really push those articulators and feel the musculature of them, and then the release. Peter, yeah? And it wouldn't hurt for while we do some of these if you guys turned your microphones back on just so that I could hear some of the sound. So again, the idea is first time through, we're working to build up the muscularity and to accommodate you guys feeling more comfortable working with more muscularity than you're used to with your articulator. When you're working, especially in larger theaters and outdoor spaces, you can't just be loud. You actually have to up the level of the physicality of your articulation, or you lose your voice. You can't literally talk over a 700-person audience on the green in front of the Golden Dome at Notre Dame, because they will kill you. It will eat you alive, the trees and the airplanes flying overhead and everything like that. But you can hang your hat on the muscularity of the articulators, right? So let's just try to go through this, every single consonant through just the first part of Peter Piper, pick to peck, maybe just that much, okay? And let's do this together. Peter. Okay?
Peter.
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 And you notice that pick has two consonants right next to each other, the k and the t right next to each other. Those are called consonant clusters. And whenever you get to them, make sure you do all the sounds that are in the consonant cluster. Most people, when they get to those places in real life, they slur those together. So it's like Peter Piper, pick, peppers, right? And we don't hear the k and the t as separate sounds. But you're professionals, and so let's hear them as separate sounds. Pick. Out loud.
Picked.
Good. Peck of pickled peppers.
Peck of pickled peppers.
Peck of pickled peppers.
Good. Now, the interesting thing about pickled peppers is we've just introduced voice consonants. The of, make sure that it's not of pickled peppers, because that's not voiced, and it's pickled, right? It's not pickled peppers, but pickled. You hear how that's got voicing on it? And peppers, even though it's spelled with an S, it's pronounced as a Z, and it's got voicing. So a peck of pickled peppers. Really overdo the voicing of the consonants that are voiced, so you can feel the muscularity working harder than you would normally work it. A peck of pickled peppers. Off you go.
Peck of pickled peppers. A peck of pickled peppers.
A peck of
A peck
pickled
of pickled peppers. A peck of
Good.
peppers.
Good. Excellent. Now watch out for the thing where you turn it into like a peck of pickled peppers. It's just a peck of pickled peppers. I try to ask actors to avoid saying a, because nobody says that unless they're reciting. I have a pointed stick, so it's just a peck of pickled peppers. Don't let it get overly formal, because in point of fact, what we want to do is be precise, but not sound like we're trying to be precise. In other words, it's the precision without the formality around it. That formality around it oftentimes can be very distancing for an audience. So we want to make certain that it just sounds like a person talking and not like, I am a robot, right? So that's the muscularity, right? Then there's another way of doing this, which is to work for agility, which is to make sure that you make all of those sounds, but you do them in quick succession where all the sounds are heard, but you're really kind of working to speed up your dance choreography. If you can think of this as mouth choreography, to speed it up just a little bit, so it's Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. A peck of pickled peppers did Peter Piper pick. So see if you can speed it up for the purposes of working for this other thing. You work, sometimes you work for muscularity, some work for precision. Let's do a little bit of work for precision, just with that much. You can do this, leave your microphones on just so that I can hear you. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. A peck of pickled peppers did Peter Piper pick. Off you go.
Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Peck of
Peter
pickled
Piper
peppers.
picked a peck of pickled peppers. A peck of pickled peppers. Peter Piper picked. Peter Piper
Peter
picked a peck of pickled peppers. A peck of pickled peppers. Peter Piper picked.
Peter Piper picked pickled peppers.
Those are really good. Okay. So it's a different experience, isn't it? You know? I know this seems kind of like, oh my God, this is so fundamental. But actually, this is a fundamental that will yield huge returns for you on stage. If you can get yourself so that you're precise with your articulation and get yourself to the point where those articulators are strong enough to make a big sound, right? We make these sounds, linguists give them terms like plosives and fricatives and affricates and all these different things. And really what they are is they're the sounds of the articulators mashing together with air and sometimes the vibration of vocal molecules of sound waves going through your mouth. The stronger those are, the further they carry in the audience, and they carry the idea of the text with them. They carry literally the intellectual property of the text. So the little exercise of Peter Piper picked seems kind of childish in a certain way, but at the same time, know that this will yield an intelligibility to your work without having you to strain your voice to get there. So let's actually, I want you to take and choose a piece of your text to play with. If you have a little bit of Shakespeare, it doesn't need to be a huge section of a Shakespeare, but and this is the point where if our technical assistants from Notre Dame, if you want to bop back and forth from person to person, I want you to try something out. I want you to go through for 3 different things. I want you to go through, first of all, for muscularity of a text. Then I want you to go through for precision and speed. And then I want you to go through and balance the 2 of those. So this is an exercise that I do with my students quite often at Northern Illinois University. I call it Papa Bear, Mama Bear, and Baby Bear. So if you've ever, again, with the fairy tales, right? But in the story, you know, this porridge is too hot, all right? It's too much. And then the next one is, this porridge is too cold, right? And then the last one is, oh, this porridge is just right. Remember that story, right? So the first time you're going to do it, you're going to overdo for the muscularity every single sound in the text. The next time you do it, you're going to overdo for the precision and speed, in other words, for the agility. And then you're going to find the just right where you have muscularity and precision and speed. Does that make sense? So going through the text each time. And the other thing that I should say about this is as you work your way through words in your text, notice what the physical sensation is of working your way through the words. In other words, some words have what I call a thingness about them. The word itself is, you know, like a word like ague. I mean, it's just a fun word to say, you know, in The Tempest, they talk to Caliban and it's like, how to find ague and stuff like that, you know. There's Andrew Ague Cheek, they call him Ague Cheek and Ague Face and stuff like that in Twelfth Night. It's just a fun word to say, you know what I mean? A lot of the characters in Shakespeare, their names have this sort of onomatopoeic value to them too. Like I think of in the Henry IV, Archbishop Scroop. You can just tell from hearing that guy's name, he's probably not a good guy, you know? Or Shakespeare would have given him a different name. But the point being that the words oftentimes that Shakespeare chooses have a certain poetry to them in the experience of saying them. Let it provoke you a little bit as you're going through and papa bearing your way through the text. Because sometimes the word itself can give you emotional experience, right? Does that make sense? Anyway, I'm going to just give this a little bit of a try so you can feel what it's like. So if I do, shall that victorious hand be feebled here that in your chambers gave you chastisement? No. Okay, so that would be my Papa Bear, right? Now my Mama Bear would be, shall that victorious hand to be feebled here that in your chambers gave you chastisement? No. Okay, fast and facile, but not particularly articulate and not particularly strong or muscular. And now Baby Bear would be marrying the first two. Shall that victorious hand be feebled here that in your chambers gave you chastisement? No. So you can hear how when you marry the two together, you get a precision, but also a facility. And then if I wanted to, I might go back and spend another time going through for the kinesthetic experience of the words themselves. Like in that word chambers and vocative. So I might go back and repeat them several times. But can you just try this, do a little work through of 5 or 6 lines of a Shakespeare text, starting Papa Bear, Mama Bear, Baby Bear. Is that clear for everybody? And for the time being, I think if you can just turn your microphones on so I can give a listen, and then I might actually call for individual people to do the Baby Bear again, just so that we can hear the narrating. But for the time being, just work with the microphone on. Cacophony will be fun.
But
I
saw
left no ring with her.
Dost thou not suspect my
Means
place?
this lady.
Dost thou not
Forbid my
suspect me?
outside. Have I not
That
charmed
he here
her?
to write
is
me
the
down
beast
ass?
I left
But
no
master,
ring with her.
remember
What
the
means
sun.
this lady? Fortune
Soft, but like 300 when it breaks.
forbid
'Tis the
my
but Juliet is the
outside.
sign.
Have I
Soft,
not
like
charmed
yonder
her?
when it breaks.
I left no ring with her. What
Sign.
means this lady? Fortune forbid my outside. Have I not charmed her?
But like
Dost thou not suspect
yonder
I left no
window
ring with her.
break.
What means this lady? Fortune forbid my outside. Have I not charmed
Juliet,
her?
but soft, but like 3 yonder window breaks. Juliet is
I
the sun.
left no ring with her.
Eyes
What
first night
means
Achilles
this lady?
used
Fortune forbid my
that
outside.
thou
Have I
had made
not
her more
charmed her?
fair than
Good. So wherever you are, just let that be good. Did everybody at least get through Mama Bear? Yeah. Okay. Let's just hear a couple of the Baby Bears with the it's just right. Just a little bit of that so that I can just let's see. Caroline, can you do a little bit of yours in the Baby Bear? The compromise between the two.
Is he not approved in the height of villain that hath slandered, scorned, dishonored my kinswoman? Oh, that I were a man. What? Bear her in hand until they come to take hands, and then with public accusation, uncovered slander, unmitigated rancor, oh, that I were a man.
Excellent, excellent. Lots and lots of great consonant action there. It becomes a gesture of the character. There's so many of the cutting consonants in that. You can really hear that unmitigated rancor. You know, that would be a place where I would go back and just play with that and play with it just to feel how that provokes something in you and how it's designed to literally assault the ear of Benedict as she's talking, right? Nice. Is it Avi? Is that how I say your name? Can I hear you?
Oh, Goneril, you are not worth the dust which the rude wind blows in your face.
Excellent. Excellent. One of the best insults in all of Shakespeare, right? Kevin, how about you?
No, not an oath, if not the face of men, the sufferance of our souls, the time's abuse. If these be motives weak, break off betimes, and each man hence to his idle bed.
Excellent. There's a couple of those S's that I would maybe go a little bit more towards Papa Bear, souls and times, you know?
Yeah.
They're probably strong enough for an indoor space, but if you were to move this into an outdoor space, I mean, you know, if we were to put a microphone above your head and record this for a book on CD or they don't do CDs anymore. Anyway, those things, it might be too much, but outdoors, I would definitely do even a little bit more of that sound in souls and times. But other than that, pretty strong. Jessica.
He jested scars that never felt a wound, but soft. What light through yonder window breaks? It is in the east, and Juliet's is the sun. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon, who's already sick and pale with grief.
Cool. Let's go back. So let's just play a little bit with. Sometimes you can have some length in some vowels. So like in arise, fair sun. Hear how that N in sun? Mm-hmm. You're making it, but let's see. Just take that little section and just find out how the vowels and consonants can actually go a little bit longer, and let that N in sun kind of right? Because I mean, at that moment, Romeo is really indulging in the fantasy of her, isn't he? And so it gives you the opportunity. Hi, arise, fair sun. So just play with that a little bit and see what that little bit of extra vowel and consonant length in the action does for it. See what that does.
Just that little bit, or you want the whole thing?
Yeah, just that little bit, yeah. Or take it like one sentence before that. Okay. It is the east. Let's go for it.
It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon, who's already sick and pale with grief, that thou her maid are far more fair than she.
Nice, Jessica. Thank you. Patrick.
Dost thou not suspect my place? Dost thou not suspect my years? Would that he were here to write me down an ass? But, masters, remember that I am an ass. Though it be not written down, yet forget not that I am an ass.
Okay, good. Let's even go, so nice precision. I want to go for more muscarity. So there's just a couple of places where I think you could go, dost thou not suspect my place? Dost thou not suspect my years? Yeah, so the place and years, there's something in the punctiliousness of this guy. Sometimes if you need to have more, I'm only using this as an example of this, but if you need to have more articulation, you can motivate it in a character by making them more persnickety. And certainly Dogberry is pretty persnickety, So in this case, just up his consonant level because he's showing off how much he knows. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And especially when you get to the ones that have voicing like years, see if you can really dig into this guy. I think it's Borachio you're talking to at this moment, and just really make every one of the consonants. I used to work with a director from Germany that used to say that you have to slash the audience's ears like you have daggers for teeth. It's very German, But the notion behind that is that there's a chewing of the consonants, but I think you can make a part of him as a character and see what happens if you just overdo it just a bit in that place.
Dost thou not suspect my place? Dost thou not suspect my years? Would that he were here to write me down an ass?
Yeah! See, that's a different sensation, isn't it, Patrick?
Yeah.
Slightly, but what it does is those words start to pop just a little bit more by the use of the articulation inside them, right? So good work. Kendra, can I hear a little bit of yours?
I left no ring with her. What means this lady? Fortune forbid my outside. Have I not charmed her?
Good. Let's do, again, there's a couple of places you have continuate consonants, and this is just a way to sort of find our way into it. But there's that NG sound and ring. I left no ring with her. That you don't have to, it's not just vowel sounds that we think on. Sometimes we can think on consonants too. Mm-hmm. Because there's a thinking kind of quality to this. If you let some of the continuant consonants, the ones that don't pop, but that continue, the M's and N's and things like that, sometimes Z's can do this too, or S's, what means this lady? That WH and what you could live on a little bit, and just see what happens if living in those consonants just a little bit longer yields that sense that Shakespeare's writing of Earth going, what the hell is going on here? Right? Give that a try.
I left no ring with her. What means this lady? Fortune forbid my outside. Have I not charmed her?
Excellent, excellent. Nicely done. Nicely done. And all of a sudden, the text starts to beat for a purpose, and it really pops and comes alive. Good work, good work. Okay, so that's the Papa Bear, Mama Bear, Baby Bear activity, right? And I really encourage people to sort of work their way through the text for the possible permutations of things that can be provoked by experiencing the sounds in each word. You might find yourself, as you do that, experiencing visions, sensations, triggering memories for yourself from your own life, possibly memories from your character's life. The words really do start to provoke if you work your way word by word, sound by sound through the text, and let the images just arise out of it. It will give you a very personal experience of your text if you do that exercise with and work your way through the text. It can't help but. Next activity that I want to work on with you guys is an activity that sort of takes this to another level, which is one of the things that we just did in going through this is that we worked to phrasing points, right? In other words, if you look at a piece of Shakespeare text, there's going to be places where Shakespeare has intentionally put punctuation. There will also be some places where scholars throughout the ages have interpreted their own sense of, oh, this must be where there's a comma, so they've put them there. That's one of the reasons why we try to go back to original like either folios or quartos to take a look at where the punctuation was in Shakespeare's day, early modern English being punctuated slightly differently than modern English today. But the idea being that the punctuation had a certain kind of weight to it then that it doesn't now. A lot of what we do now with punctuation is what I call politeness punctuation. So if you can get a piece of text, if you can get it back to the quartos or the folios, and oftentimes the quartos are even better for this because they were pirated. And so it was a person sitting in the theater madly writing down what they were hearing, and they were putting punctuations where they heard phrasing. So in a certain way, it's a record of how the piece was performed. But certainly with the folios, you would have more of a likelihood of seeing how Shakespeare may have punctuated as he was writing the text before the foul papers got sent off to the printers and publishers and all that kind of stuff after he died. But the point being that the punctuation then meant a lot more than it does now, because they didn't punctuate because of rules of grammar, because a lot of those rules had not really been worked out yet in Shakespeare's day. So the punctuation was there to help you organize your thought process. And of course, when actors had very short periods of time to commit to memory a role and get up and mount it and rehearse it, I mean, rehearsal times were like 2 weeks at most. Sometimes when they remounted plays, it would be a day or two to get them up and running. So, I mean, it's kind of crazy, but all of the hints had to be in the text. And so punctuation can be really, really useful. It was terribly useful to actors back then, as far as we know, and certainly can still be useful today in terms of working your way to where natural thoughts change and shift, where there's parentheticals, where there's full stop periods, where there's commas. All of those things help organize the rhetoric of the language into digestible chunks, right? So I want you to kind of do a little activity for a few minutes where I want you to work your way through the text. And every time you hit a punctuation, I want you to just sort of change direction a little bit. And for right now, arbitrarily change pitch too. So let me just give you an idea. I might go through my text and go, Shall that victorious hand be feebled here, that in your chambers gave you chastisement? No. No, the gallant monarch is in arms, and, like an eagle o'er his airy towers, to souse annoyance that comes too near his nest. And you, degenerate, you ingrate revolts, you bloody Neros, ripping at the womb of your dear mother England, right? Okay, so every time I get to a punctuation, I am shifting slightly my pitch, my rhythm, my vocal dynamics, and also I'm trying to physically shift a little bit too, so that I can feel the shifts at those punctuation points. If you don't do this, an audience won't be able to follow the text as easily, because you know, a certain way you need to take the audience by the hand and let them know that idea is done. We're now moving on to a new idea. So see if you can play with shifting your vocal dynamics, either pitch, rhythm, volume, and then add a physical gesture each time you get to a different punctuation. No, the gallant monarch is in arms, and like an eagle o'er his airy towers to souse annoyance that comes too near his nest. Yeah? Does that make sense, guys? And if you could turn your cameras and microphones back on, we'll listen to the cacophony of it and watch you guys work a little bit. But just work your way through punctuation to punctuation. Each of them should sound different. Each of them should kill off the old one with a difference, and make sure you add gesture to it, all right? Give it a go. You can all go at once, for starters.
Goneril, you are not worth the dust.
Is he not
What?
approved in the
I
height
left no ring with her.
And begging.
What
They're
means
not
this
words.
lady?
They're not
dishonored my
Fortune
kinswoman?
forbid my
lack
outside.
They're not the rebels need soldiers. Though it be shame to be on a
Break
He
off
left no ring
behind.
with her.
though it be a
Bear
shame
her.
to die but
What
one, it
means
is
this?
worse
No.
shame to beg than to be on the
Fortune
worst side.
No.
forbid my outside. Have I not
What?
on her?
A young knave and begging.
I left
There not
no ring with
wars?
her.
Our souls.
Unmitigated
Appointment
return.
doth not the king lack
Lady.
subject?
Oh, that I were a
What?
man.
Motive.
Young knave
Excellent.
and begging.
Outside,
Excellent.
have I
Let's
not?
Is
hear
there
a
not
couple of these. All right, let me just hear a couple of these. We probably won't do everybody. Caroline, could you just go through a little bit of yours?
Is he not approved in the height a villain that hath slandered, scorned, dishonored my kinswoman? Oh, that I were a man. What? Bear her in hand until they come to take hands, and then, with public accusation, uncovered slander, unmitigated rancor.
Good. Very clear shifts. You guys can hear how when the shifts are clear from one thing to the next, I'm certain that old idea is done. Nicely done. Nice set of pitch changes there. Kendra, could you give a little example of this too?
What means this lady? Fortune forbid my outside. Have I not charmed her? She did make good view of me.
Good. And real easy for me to follow along with the thought process. It actually, what's nice about it is, again, I'm hearing you think your way through the text. Patrick. Nicely done. Thank you, Kendra.
I am a wise fellow, and, which is more, an officer, and, which is more, a householder, and, which is more, as pretty a piece of flesh as any in Messina.
Nice. Okay, good. One of the nice things about this is when you do this, you can really hear the parenthetical thoughts. And, which is more, an officer, which is more, right? And it really helps clarify those, because otherwise all that stuff just becomes gobbledygook in the audience's ear. If we hear those natural pitch changes that happen when the ideas slightly shift or suspend and then go back to each other, the audience gets to go on the trip much more clearly with us. Nicely done. Let me just hear one more of these. How about Kevin?
No, not an oath. If not the face of men, the sufferance of our souls, the time's abuse. If these be motives weak, break off betimes, and each man hence to his idle bed.
Nice, very nice. Now, obviously, at a certain point, we have to make certain that when the punctuation shifts, that we don't take too much time between each of them. But at this point, before you get to that, where you find that where do I need to catch breath? Is it at the end of a line where I can afford a full breath? And we start looking at how it works with verse, finding what each of those segments is, then you figure out how to string them all together. But what you're doing is really nice because each of them it's almost as if each of them has its own little objective. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Doing that really, really nicely. Cool. So that idea I want to now feed into another kind of activity that's moving us towards the end of this. Again, we're working with vocal variety, we're working with vocal dynamics, we're working with the articulation being a part of this too, and which is more, right? I mean, all of these things are coming together to give you a more vibrant experience on stage, and as you have the more vibrant experience as the actor, hopefully it will provoke that experience in your audience. Let's move on to this idea that I have of switching these off. Rhetorically speaking, oftentimes in the construction of rhetoric in Shakespeare's day, words and ideas were structured in such a way that each idea kills off the idea before it. Literally, I posit something and then answer my question or refute the question, one or the other, constantly through some sentences even. There's a notion that there's a caesura or a rise and fall in a sentence of Shakespeare, where there's a natural suspension where the second half of the sentence responds to what happens in the first half, if that makes sense. No longer mourn for me when I am gone, then the surly sullen bell gives note my soul has fled. I'm paraphrasing, but you can hear where those suspensions are, where those little caesuras are in the line, where the idea kills off the beginning of itself. I like to call that Fiddler on the Roof acting. If any of you have ever seen the movie of Fiddler on the Roof or a good production of it, the character Tevye has these monologues that he does where he goes through and he says, on the one hand, but then on the other hand, but then on the first hand, well, on the other hand, and he keeps going back and forth as he debates his course going forward. And, it's like, I love that my daughter likes Montcalm soil, but on the other hand, he's poor. On the other hand, he loves my daughter. On the other hand, he'll never make a good husband and she'll always be hungry. But on the other hand, she'll be happy, right? And he literally goes back and forth debating his course of action in these monologues that are strewn throughout the play. I want you to try that activity with your text. So what I want you to try to do now is to start here and then go here and literally do the physical gesture with your hand so that it's very, very clear that you're killing off the idea with another idea. So for example, if I do this, I'll take a monologue that I do, a Macbeth monologue. To be thus is nothing, but to be safely thus. Our fears and Banquo stick deep, and in his royalty of nature reigns that which would be feared. He chid the sisters when first they put the name of king upon me, and bade them speak to him. You see? So I'm literally, the idea kills the old idea. Physically, I occupy a slightly different space as my idea occupies a slightly different space. And it's reflected not just in the physicality, but in the voice. It's a voice class, after all, right? So see if you can do this. You can all turn your cameras and microphones back on for a minute and just work your way through 5, 10 different ideas that kill each other off. On the one hand, on the other hand. Give it a go. You all look at once.
Again in triumph.
I left no ring on her.
And Mercutio slang.
What means
That
this
I
ring?
Way in heaven and respective.
Fortune forbid my outside.
Leans higher-eyed
Have I not
theory and
charmed
conduct
her?
now. Now,
You didn't make a
Mercutio
deal.
takes villain back
Must be
again.
the eyes.
Like outrageous Eve from Mercutio's soul with
Speaking starts to shine.
I cited two in your
Dang
ring.
for thine company.
Sure, the cunning of her,
No, not enough.
but none of my lord's ring.
Material sap.
Ye simply
May
I am the man,
Times the deuce.
and if be so as tis,
Be motives weak.
Lions
Cough, betimes.
poor lady would
Either
better.
thou
Each
or
man
I
and with wishing.
or both must go with.
Therefore,
let high
Good. Okay, cool. Jessica, I want to actually work yours just a little bit. Either thou or I or both. Let it be that specific, okay? Because I'm guessing that each of those probably has a punctuation on it. So go back through and make sure, even the little ones that you're not sure, they might be politeness punctuation. Every one of those, from the one hand to the other, make them as clear a shifts as possible, okay?
Yeah. For Mercutio's For Mercutio's head's a little way above our head, staying for thine to keep him company. Either thou or I or both must go with him.
Excellent, excellent. Nice. And what's interesting about that is even in that moment when he's getting ready to launch into the sword fight, he's realizing he could die too. And I think a lot of people rush through that moment. Thou or I or both. We could both die now. Does that make sense? It really ups the stakes and gives a terribly powerful launch into that sword fight, but it forces you to be present to each of those shifts. It's not, either thou or I or both, let's go with him, right? It's Jesus, I could die, you could die, we could both die, but somebody's going to follow Mercutio into death. Do you know what I mean? Making it more specific by letting each of those things be the thing itself. Avi, can I hear yours? Thanks, Jessica.
O Goneril, thou art not worth the dust which the rude wind blows in your face. I fear your disposition, that nature which condemns its origin cannot be bordered certain in itself. From her material, no. She that herself would sliver and debranch from her materials sap, perforce may wither and come to deadly use.
Good. So the branch wither from herself, perforce may wither, and right? See if you can just work that shift a couple of times so that it's really, really clear. There's one idea, then the other idea kills it off. Can you just work that little section? I know it's a tongue twister. It's one of the reasons why I want to go back and do it.
She that herself would sliver and debranch from her material sap, perforce may wither and come to deadly use. Good.
One more time. Now that you've got the choreography in your mouth right, they branch and wither, and then the answer to the question will destroy itself. Right? Can you hear how the beginning of the idea is here? A person that would do that to somebody else is probably going to come to bad herself. Right? That's the paraphrase of the idea. See if you can get that sentence. Anybody that would do this is probably it's not going to work out great for you. But hear how the idea, the second part of the idea, kills off the first part of the idea. Yeah? Try it one more time.
She that herself would sliver and debranch from her material sap, will perforce may wither and come to deadly use.
Good. Much more clear. Can you hear how the second part of that withering and coming to deadly use? I mean, basically, you're going to die too, right? And probably deadly use means other people as well. Cool. Can I hear one more of these? Does anybody else want to give this a go? Kendra. Excellent.
I left no ring with her. What means this lady? Fortune forbid my outside, have I not charmed her? She did. Well, sorry, I lost my spacing.
Yeah.
You go back again.
Right. Yeah.
Start it again. I left no ring with her. What means this lady? Fortune forbid my outside, have I not charmed her? She did make a view of me. So much methought our eyes had lost their tongue. She did speak and starts distractedly. She loves me. Sure, the cunning of her passion calls me in this cheerless vessel.
Good. Sometimes when you do it, that's really lovely, Kendra. Sometimes when you do it, you'll surprise yourself. And there's some comedy in where those shifts can happen. And the surprise of making a shift from one thing to like, she loves me, sure. Oh my God, that's, like that, like those kinds of quick shifts. Initially, that's really arbitrary. But sometimes you can find something in the arbitrary that you go, oh, that's good. That's going to add funny to the show. Or, you know what I mean? And since it's a comedy, that nicely done. Nicely done. So one last thing that I want to do with you guys to finish this out is to take this notion of the rhetorical stringing together of ideas that kill each other off to its next and logical conclusion, which is that in Shakespeare, he never starts by writing out monologues, right? It's not like, well, now I shall write a monologue, I mean, it's not like the ancient Greeks where they literally wrote in long odes and then in stichomythia, right? Which is the back and forth in dialogue, and then I will have a long sort of speechy area and then back and forth, right? Shakespeare did this much more naturally, although there are, monologues in Shakespeare that are 4, 5, even 6 minutes long. The point being is that it always seems like it comes organically, even though it's in the artificial form of verse. And it's because it's the ideas that spring out of each other. The notion that as I say something, I have a reason to say the next thing. An idea kills off the old idea or gains credence from it and then leads you further down the path, right? So there's a notion when we play red light, green light, yellow light. If you ever played that as a kid, we're going to do that by provoking somebody to speak a piece of text, by challenging what they're saying. And so the idea is we're going to take a piece of Shakespeare, and I'm gonna do it first, and then you guys will do it with each other. But I think I'll do this since Caroline has done this. She's a student of mine at NIU. Maybe Caroline will do this to start. And I'm going to just challenge her text by asserting things, and she's going to respond not with any other words other than the next words of Shakespeare's. And the idea is that I'm either challenging what she's saying, agreeing with it, or asking for more from green light, yellow light, right? And as she speaks, she's responding to my challenge. Because on stage, when you do this, you have to know that you're responding either to the other people on stage or to the audience. And they're saying, oh, please. Or they're saying, tell me more. Or, I don't understand what the heck you're saying. And the audience is doing that. And the other people on stage are doing that. I mean, if they're actively listening and being good scene partners, they certainly are. And you need to respond to that to give you a reason to continue talking. Otherwise, it would all be stichomythia, one line, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, like General Hospital. But instead, we have these long speeches. So in this case, Caroline's going to take a piece of text, and I'm going to provoke it with red lights, green lights, yellow lights. And the first time through, we'll try that. Okay, Caroline? Whenever you are ready.
Talk with a man out at a window. A proper saying.
A proper saying? What's improper about that?
Sweet hero.
Yes.
She is wronged.
No, she's not.
She is slandered.
Oh, please.
She is undone.
I don't get it. Why?
Princes and counties.
I don't get what you're talking about, princes and counties. Who?
Surely, a princely testimony.
Yeah.
A goodly count.
Yeah.
Count Comfit.
Who? What?
A sweet gallant, surely.
Oh, are you talking about who? The Duke?
Oh, that I were a man for his sake.
Why would you want to be a man? I don't understand.
Or that I had any friend who would be a man for my sake.
I'm your friend?
But manhood is melted into curtsies.
Okay, good. So this time, don't wait for me to finish talking.
Okay.
Go back through. Let's not chop it up so much.
Great.
But let do it on the fly, okay? Mm-hmm. And let it provoke the next thing in the moment just a little bit more. And right now it's a little logical, Okay? I'm asking for you to respond in the instant as you go. Okay? We'll do the same piece again to that point, or maybe a little bit further. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
Talk with a man out at a window. A proper saying.
What do you mean by a proper
Sweet
saying?
hero, she is wronged.
No, she's not.
She is slandered.
No, she's
she
not.
Is undone.
Oh.
Princes and counties.
What,
surely a princely.
Are you talking about the Duke now? Or are you talking about
count?
Claudia?
Count Comfort, a sweet gallant, surely.
Oh, you're talking about.
Oh, that I were a man for his.
Why do you want to be a man?
Or that I had any friend who would be a man for my sake.
I'm your
But
friend.
manhood is melted into curtsies, valor into compliment, and men are only turned into tongue, and trim ones too.
Okay, good. And notice how, and trim ones too, you shut me up with it too, didn't you? That was great. Now what we're going to do, we're going to do the same thing again. And I'm just going to give you non-verbal red light, green light, yellow lights. I'm going to overact a little bit intentionally so that you can read the expression. And I want you to respond to my physical cueing as the reason to say the next thing that you say. Okay? Try it again.
Talk with a man out at a window. A proper saying. Sweet hero, she is wronged. She is slandered. She is undone. Princes and counties, surely a princely testimony. A goodly count, Count Comfit, a sweet gallant, surely. Oh, that I were a man for his sake. Or that I had any friend who would be a man for my sake. But manhood is melted into curtsies, valor into compliment, and men are only turned into tongue, and trim ones too.
Okay, good. So now the next step in that process would probably be to take this and do it without me in the room. Literally do it, remembering the provoking of it. Does that make sense? So I'm wondering if there's a way that we can do this with at least one or two more. We're just about out of time, but I wonder if there's a way that I can have somebody else do this with maybe a different person. So can I have somebody volunteer to do their monologue and somebody volunteer to provoke? So Kevin, you turned yours on, and Jessica. Jessica, do you want to provoke Kevin?
Sure.
Cool. There's no right or wrong to this, by the way. This is just a way of getting the person to react in their text so that it's not just speechy, but that it's responding to the stimulus of the world around them. Yeah? Give it a try.
No, not an oath. If not the face of men. The sufferance of our souls, the times, abuse.
What sufferance?
If these be motives weak, break off betimes. And
What
each man hence to his idle bed.
Each man has none.
So let high-sighted tyranny range on till each man drop by lottery.
What do you mean?
But if these, as I am sure they do,
don't
bear fire enough to kindle cowards and to steal with valor the melting spirits of women, then, countrymen, what need have we but our own cause to spur us to address?
Don't you have more?
Nice. Actually, and really nice, both provoking and Kevin, really nice responding to her. It was much more in the moment that way. Okay, this time keep an eye on Jessica and just take the nonverbal cueing from it. This is probably the last one that we'll get to do, but I just wanted you guys to listen without me being involved in it. What happens when that nonverbal red light, green light, yellow light becomes the spur to clarify, to restate, to retrench, to try new ideas. You know, I was just gonna say, no, we don't need any more soldiers, but all of a sudden I'm talking about St. Crispin's Day, right? He didn't know he was gonna talk about St. Crispin's Day when his little brother says, God, I wish we had a few more soldiers here. But all of a sudden he finds himself having to say it because he's provoked into it by the resistance, the nonverbal resistance that he gets from the soldiers on the battlefield, right? So now Jessica is all those soldiers, all right? But they don't dare talk to your face like that because you're the king. But you can see it in their face. Jessica provoking. non-verbally, but feel free to overact a bit too. Okay, here we go.
No, not an oath. If not the face of men, with the sufferance of our souls, the time's abuse. If these be motives weak, break off betimes, and each man hence to his idle bed. So let high-sighted tyranny range on, and each man drop by lottery. But if these, as I am sure they do, bear fire enough to kindle cowards and to steal with valor the melting spirits of women, then countrymen, what need have we but our own cause to prick us to redress? And what other oath? And then
Okay, good. Awesome. What was that like? What was the sensation of that, Kevin? What was that like for you?
Oh, I love it. It does very much bring you to the moment. And then the trouble being not to like focus too hard on that first instinct that you felt and just use that, but instead to continue to pay attention to your partner. It's a really good way to like keep you present.
Cool. So in the end, the idea is to merge the voice work thing that we started with, doing all the bizarre exercises and all the vocal variety and everything, Kevin, that we were working on, with the acting, because now it's the variety and the shifts and the changes are forcing you to make very specific acting choices, and it's coming out of this place that might seem artificial from the articulation and vocal warm-up exercises, but it gives you an entree into really being in the moment with the text. So guys, I hope that was a useful sort of introductory primer to some of the work that hopefully some of you will get to do with me, and some of you already have. And for people like Jessica and Jacob and Caroline that I've known from before, it was great to get a chance to work with you again. So I think at this point, if you guys have some questions, or if Grant wants to jump in too and ask any questions, I think we're going to do just a little bit of a Q&A session. But that's it for my workshop. I hope that gives you an idea of what I do and how I can contribute to what you do. Thanks. Hi, Grant.
I enjoyed that very much. I was quietly enjoying it. And indeed, that is the kind of classwork that we embark on, not to make it sound like an infomercial, but the apprentice program includes classwork like that for undergrads, graduate students, and recent grads in the first 3 weeks, typically each summer that they're with us, while they are rehearsing the touring company show. Then apprentices and equity actors, local pros from all over, Broadway, Chicago, LA, St. Louis, gather together and right here in South Bend, and produce the equity, the professional company show. And just to summarize, we also have a community company that is working in a variety of locations in and around the Michiana area. With schools and just in with our neighbors in general. So that's where this component kind of fits in. But I would love to welcome all the apprentices back to the screen and see if they would like to respond to what they just did, see if it had resonances or connections with some of their other work, and to let them fire away with questions to you, Stanton, here. And then we'll take just 15 minutes for this, okay, folks?
Great.
Or less if if there's only a couple. Go for it. And you can unmute yourselves. This is a small enough group, I think, that you can unmute yourself when you've got a question.
I don't have a question, but I would like to say thank you for allowing me to join, even though I'm not an apprentice.
Our pleasure.
Absolutely, Caroline. Caroline just graduated from NIU's program and was my assistant for pretty much the whole time that she was there, and is not only a wonderful actress but also a really organized human being, which I'm not. So it's great to have you join in, Caroline. And Jessica, nice to see you here too. I worked with Jessica. She actually assisted me at Notre Dame several years ago. And was really, really helpful in assisting me with a lot of the coaching and stuff that I did at the festival. And I don't know what you're up to now, Jessica, but it's great to see you once again.
Same. A lot of the similar stuff, actually.
Yeah. Right.
Good. From a secluded, location, right? We have another ringer among us that I had fun embarrassing the last time she was with us for a training class, because she'll be with us through most of the summer, and that's Avi Satyawan. Now I know how to pronounce it, and I get something in my throat. It's not fair. And Avi was a member of Shakespeare Around the Bend and Shakespeare in Fremont Park last year, and bats far above her grade in general. And so we're delighted that she could come along with us with I think, what was it, about an hour's notice, 45 minutes, Avi? And in a production that included several scenes from Othello. Avi had been playing Michael Cassio and jumped into the role of Iago with no rehearsal, none, and was absolutely marvelous. And I thought did it off book, but yeah, see, that's our fun story with Stanton and I share, and can be related at another time. But Avi jumped on stage for an actor who couldn't be with us quite suddenly, and did it flawlessly. She was amazing. So, Avi Satyawan.
Good theater stories. Thanks, Avi. Nice for joining with us.
I actually do have a question, if I may.
About what you did? What was that, Jessica?
Stanton first, and then Jack. Jessica, sorry. I know you. Stanton, you had a follow-up question for Avi, and then Jessica.
Oh, so Avi, are you going to be are you in the intern company?
No, I'm going into 9th grade.
Oh my goodness. So young and so tender. Sorry, I'm just loosely quoting Shakespeare.
Yeah, batting above her pay grade. Yeah, I'm mixing it up, of course, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Great. Jessica.
Hitting over your weight class.
Yeah, hitting above your weight grade. Yeah, something like that.
Just really quick, because I've done a lot of work working with a young company, or now the apprenticeship under Stanton, and those are usually college-aged students and and above. When it comes to working with younger students, like grade school, elementary, because I always wonder regarding the development of their voices and development of just their bodies as far as working extensively on the vocal training when it comes to Shakespeare. So how transferable would you say this technique is to younger audiences?
Oh my goodness. You just have to find an activity to get them in. I was the education director at the Baltimore Shakespeare Festival when I first started doing this, and they booked a gig for me through central casting. Anyway, they booked a gig for me with third graders, and I went in and I just took the scene between Robin Goodfellow and the First Fairy from Midsummer Night's Dream and split the lines up, and I worked with them trying to do literally a lot of what we just did: articulation, getting the mouth more open, working on vocal variety, all those kinds of things. I just had to find a game of some kind for each part of that to get them there. But I tell you what, by the time we were done with an hour and a half of that, you could understand the text. It had meaning behind it. I think that young people, in a lot of ways, because they don't let their lack of imagination get in the way, they still have an imagination that hasn't been beaten out of them. Oftentimes, they can be more vivid than people that are starting out just at high school and college age. So I feel like you can do a lot as long as you can trigger their imagination. And I love it. I mean, I actually have worked in summer camps for kids down to those ages quite often. And, I'm just a big kid at heart anyway. So for me, it's just an opportunity to get in there and play. So when you can find a sense of play with this work, I think it's always better. I mean, I have graduate students that are in their 40s, 50s even, and I always appeal to them to go back and play and find a sense of play. So that's for me, all of those vocal things that we're talking about, they still hold up. It's just the young voices heal more quickly than the older ones. So You know, if you tell them to use their outdoor play voice and they end up hurting themselves, it's actually probably less urgent because it'll come back the next day as opposed to a week later. So, but yeah, the key is capturing the imagination and the sense of play. Anything else?
Good question.
Guys, this is really, really a lot of fun. Do you have any questions, Grant?
No, I'm thinking of all of the young students that we've been teaching recently, and just wanting to applaud Jessica's work, and to encourage you to and continue that. We in the last year have worked with students in a secure residential facility called DePaul Academy. We've worked with several homeschooler groups with kids as young as 2, and their older siblings, kind of leading them along through the exercises. They're having great fun, you know, flinging Shakespearean sound at one another, and not knowing that it's supposed to be hard and it's supposed to be, you know, challenging. And so I just wanted to encourage that. Well, if I can encourage each of you to spend a little journaling time in terms of considering future roles that either you are anticipating playing with us next summer in the postponed season, or roles that you'd like to play just in general or have your eye on, and not necessarily just in the world of Shakespeare, but applications across your career aspirations, both on the acting side and non, because we have a couple of folks here who are either aspiring actors, but also aspiring directors, and some design folk as well. And so I'll encourage you to do that. And it's been a tremendous practice for me, and I highly, highly recommend it. And in the meantime, Stanton directs quite regularly at Northern Illinois University in DeKalb, Illinois, and you can see his work, I'm convinced, starting at some point in the next year. We'll keep working online until such time as it is available to us in person. You want to say a farewell, Stanton?
Yeah, thank you guys so much for the opportunity and for being game and just jumping in with all of this. And I can't wait to make personal acquaintance, not through Zoom, with everybody here, and hopefully work together in the future. It's been a real pleasure, and you guys really took to this in a really lovely way. So the opportunity to actually teach in the middle of the long summer of my discontent has been a big opportunity for me. So thank you, guys.
Awesome. Coming up on Thursday night, we're going to move over into the scenic arts world with Fie Fo Wood, or Fee Fi Fo. I'm going to get the title right. Fee Fi Fo Wood, featuring Scott Gurwitz. We're very excited to welcome Scott on Thursday. He's been the change artist, the lead change artist for this little television show of which some of you may have heard called The Oprah Winfrey Show, but also one of the principal scenic artists from the Goodman Theater and the Steppenwolf Theaters. I've worked at Chicago Shakes, and for a good 11 or 12 years now or so, the Notre Dame Shakespeare Festival each summer. That's Scott Gurwitz Thursday night, also at 7 o'clock. I'm really, really thrilled and grateful again to Stanton Davis. And now we'll just wave and conclude our night. Thanks again, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us on our online offerings. Cheers.
Bye.